I'm gonna officially open the meeting. Calling it to order. This is the Neighborhood Stabilization Oversight Funds and the purpose of the meeting. And before I start in the meeting, I want to recognize, Councilor Zaida Govan. I want to recognize, Councilor Lavar. My, counselor, here with me today is Councilor Malo Brown. And I'm pretty sure some other councilors are gonna be uniting into this meeting. Therefore, the purpose of this meeting today is, as a newcomer to the council, and I know that some other councilors feel the same way. I want an update of what is the impacted neighborhood stabilization funds. And where are we with those funds? So I don't know who to assign the appropriation or answering. So Lindsay, if you want to start, or Pat, the floor is yours.
Would you like us to start with the balance?
Well, do you have a little, and I could give a brief history for the public, because I'm in my meetings, I want the public to know what is it that we're discussing. So if you want, I could do that, because I got a synopsis overall of what the understanding of what is the neighborhood impacted monies for.
Sure.
So the neighborhood impacted stabilization funds was sponsored and ordered from other former councilors, Jesse Letterman, Justin Hurt, Margaret William, Adam Gomez, and present Councilor Mary Edwin and Tracy Westfield. In this order that I'm looking at, it was ordered that the city accepted the provision of Section 5B of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, and created the Impacted Neighborhood Stabilization Funds with the purpose of improving the quality of life in disproportionately impacted neighborhood within the city, as defined by the Cannabis Control Committee, and abutting neighborhood within 1.5 miles of the marijuana establishment. And it was for the purpose for educational, recreational programming for youth and adults, neighborhood business incentive, improving to infrastructure, recreational and community sites, and other needed initiatives should be funded by the Impacted Neighborhood Stabilization Funds as stated purpose. According to the order enacted, 33% of the funds received through the retail sale tax of 3% imposed by the city of Springfield on the sale of marijuana and marijuana products to consumers by marijuana retailers will be dedicated to the Impacted Neighborhood Stabilization Funds for the stated purpose. And it was to be effective the fiscal year 2020, beginning July 2019. So what it means for the public was that within 1.5 mile radius of the establishment, those impacted neighborhood will receive for 3% out of the 33%. Now I have Lindsay, and she will go in more detail. Thank you.
Yes, so correct. So the neighborhood Impacted Neighborhood Stabilization Fund, like you said, it was set up. It does take 33% of our local option impact fee revenue from recreational adult use marijuana sales. The remainder of it goes into the general fund, but this 33% goes into this Impacted Neighborhood Stabilization Fund that had been set up by City Council. As of right now, there's been no spending from that account. And as it stands, the current balance is $1.54 million.
So under the stipulation, Lindsay, this approval of monies, $1.4 million, what role does the city council as a body plays into it, just for purpose of being educated?
Sure. So, from my understanding, just like any other financial order, what would happen is the mayor would sponsor an order, put it on the city council agenda, and it would be voted on by you all. It would be appropriated somewhere to spend
Thank you.
for reasons that are restricted within the order.
So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna open the floor. If anyone has a question, I see that Councilor Gavon has a question. Councilor Gavon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Lindsay, there's $1.54 million in that fund currently, and that's since 2019 that it's being collected.
No, it first started being collected in fiscal year 21.
I see. Okay. And is the neighborhood services of the city just sent out a notice about an opportunity for neighborhood councils to apply for some funding to do some projects in the neighborhood. Is that money part of this?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, because they're called, oh, it's a neighborhood enhancement grant that they're talking about. So, so what would we be able to use this money for?
So, it's pretty restricted in the areas that you can spend it. And I mean, beyond that, obviously any eligible, public funding project.
So like, for example, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, just
No,
one more question, I guess.
no.
Thank you. So, because I heard from what the chair read was that you could use it for educational purposes, recreational, and to support businesses in the neighborhood. Is that true?
Support businesses in the neighborhood, I don't know about that. I
That
would have to do more research on that.
that was part of what she read. So like, for example, if I wanted to do some youth recreation stuff in Indian Orchard, for example, how would I access that money for our neighborhood? That's my last question, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay.
Sure, do you want me to answer?
If you
Yeah.
can, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so like any other financial order, it would have to come from the mayor. So I assume, you know, if a city councilor had a project or a plan, as long as it's something that the city can do financially, as in we're able to and we're allowed to do it, then the mayor would put forth an order for a vote from city council.
Any other question, Councilor Gavon?
No, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before I continue, I have to do a clarification on the research. The monies from the establishment, it has to be in the impacted area, which according to the order is 1.5 miles from the establishment. So what I had directed of Phil to give me a list of the impacted area. And when was looking at the neighborhood that was impacted, I had in my area, the ward, I have 4 establishment, and 1 potential, according to the information. So for point of clarification for the public, it has to be within 1.5 mile radius of the impacted neighborhood. I have Councilor Labar. Councilor Labar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I guess Councilor Govan kind of asked my question in a sense, but just for the record, I just wanted to get clarification just for my sanity. So this money is available now. There's no other procedure that we have to go through the state house to get it allocated. It's something that's available now, and obviously, like you said, it'll be up to the mayor to put on an order for the city council to vote on.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So I know I think it was Pat or somebody sent out the locations of the dispensaries. Um, So, all right, I'll pull up that list. All right, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm recognizing Council Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have the list? What are the list of the businesses within the 1.5 miles?
I don't have a list like that.
I think that, it was sent out to all counselors. Asked to please send it to all counselors, so they had an idea of the areas that were reflected.
And now I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 establishments listed. It says, 337 East Columbus, DM Springfield. It says 200 West Springfield Hall of Fame Way, INSA. It says 6 Bricks, Lemonade, Primus, and Page Boulevard Holding Group. Out of those groups, are those groups currently supplying funds to the city? That's not, when did they when
They're not all operational.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
so any adult use open in business dispensary has to pay 3% of retail sales to the state. And then that is passed through back to us. So we don't know the amounts by dispensaries or anything like that. It's just a lump sum payment, and 33% of that lump sum payment goes into this fund.
Okay, just, I always refrain from the voting, but these type of things, when it comes to the actual funding and the impact of the community, I will speak on things like this because in Councilor Perez area, it is a saturation over there. And if you look at some of the infrastructures around, even at that New North Citizen Council, that building right next to there, their community over there has been impacted severely. I mean, I would love for the mayor to maybe in the city and maybe as a body consider really taking a look over there and seeing some of the impact that the opioid, the drugs, and just infrastructure, over there, and how this could actually impact that area. So it's just something I'm throwing out there. I mean, if you guys can maybe think about how, we're gonna use this money. I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, I think we should start tapping into some of it and using it in some of the areas. I know Councilor Govan might want it in some of her areas, like she asked. Councilor Click Bruce might want it in his area. I'd love to have some in my area. So, I mean, I would love to, is there a plan to meet does the mayor have a plan to meet with maybe a group to figure out how we might distribute some of this funding to potential impacted neighborhoods?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can certainly offline, Kathy and I, can talk about it, and I'm sure that she can just bring it to his attention to see if he wants to move forward on anything.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And that was one of the purpose of the meeting, how to put a process in place and what is the process defined by the city, because I think that's the most important thing. And then as indicated in the order and the sponsorship of the order, it was stipulated for educational and recreational programming for youth and adult, neighborhood business incentive, it is in the order. Improvement to infrastructure and recreational and community sites, and other needed initiative. So, that was the purpose of having this meeting, the beginning of it. And I, as the chair, wanted to have the counselors out here today. Thank you for being at the meeting for the purpose of an update, so we could follow whatever guidelines developed by the city and see if it's applicable. I think the need in the community is high, and if we have these funds in the community, let's look at them And with the collaboration of the mayor and the city council, let's work on a process and a plan for the expenditures of the money. From the councilor perspective, Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lindsay, when we crafted this legislation, it was done vaguely so that they could have a lot of different uses. My question to you, and when I asked, or actually I suggested to Maria when she reached out to Phil and asked him to create the list, because these dispensaries can only be on certain streets in certain neighborhoods. We had certain individuals and made sure that they weren't going to be like, for example, along Island Pond Road. But the point is that my question, or the first question is, the 3% that you're collecting, as Mallow kind of touched on earlier, the listing that Phil gave us lists all of the licenses that have been granted, but all of those are not operational yet. So for example, Primus is not operational. They have their license and they're still working on their building, but they've made no contribution of this $1.5 million that's available. Cookies Lemonade has not made any contributions to this funding. The language says that the money has to be spent within 1.5 miles of the dispensaries.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, Councilor Perez's area has lemonades, which depending on the when you look at I'm assuming the boundaries are similar to the boundaries of the ward. So if you go from a mile and 1.5 miles from Lemonades, which isn't operational and hasn't given any money yet, that would take her into her neighborhood. It would also take INSA's money into her neighborhood, and it would take Six Bricks into her neighborhood. But for example, Zada Govan's neighborhood, which is Indian Orchard, would not qualify, and this is what I need clarity on, because it was never clear when we all sat down and started putting this language together and presenting it to the mayor and the financial team about how to do this with CJ. We never got beyond how this money is going to be dispensed, because 1.5 miles and the map that Phil gave you with the listing did not do what I asked him to do. I wanted a map that shows a circle around each dispensary. And then I wanted the finance department to be able to say how much money is being contributed to this pot that came from INSA, how much came into this pot that came from Six Bricks, and as Primus Mason and others, I know there's a dispensary that's going up in Boston Road. There is Liberty. So 1.5 mile from Liberty would be money that should be going to Zyda Govan. Or is this money 1.5 million for the entire city, but can only be spent within 1.5 mile of a dispensary? So those are the types of things that need to be clarified. And I was hopeful that we would get some more clarification for now, because the language is very vague in terms of what the money could be used for. But if it's 1.5 million of the total money that can be spent within 1.5 million of a dispensary, or is the bulk of the money, for example, the Six Bricks that INSA collects, if you go 1.5 mile beyond that barrier, then you're giving no money to Zyda Govan in Indian Orchard, nor would you be giving any to Island Pond Road, where they didn't want a dispensary, so they made sure that it wasn't one of those streets that could have one. So that's the question that I would charge to you to go back and find out, because if there's, I see in the chat that Tracy's asking, is there a dispensary in Indian Orchard? If there is, and I don't think that if it is and it's operational, that's the part of the question. Should the money that Indian Orchard's dispensary collects, their contribution, would that stay in their neighborhood, or would their money get put into the pot and could be spent in my neighborhood, which might be 3-4 miles away from them? That same thing with Mallow. Mallow's district has Primus Mason coming online. They haven't contributed any of this money yet because they haven't been operational. But once they do become operational and they start to contribute money, should that money stay within Mason Square neighborhood in the general area of where his dispensary is? And the
So-
same thing.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Counselor.
No, you got to adjust to what I'm asking.
Yeah, so as far as the ins and outs about where it can be spent, if it can be spent around this dispensary that's not open, any of those questions I cannot answer. I would have to, reach out to the law department. But I can tell you that we do not know the amount that comes in from INSA or Six Bricks or Liberty. It's a lump sum, and the state will not give us the information about how much was of that pot, no pun intended, was broken down between the dispensaries that contributed the funding.
Okay, we didn't, what you just answered the question in a sense that we wouldn't be able to figure it out because it's not available to us to know. So obviously then that's a moot point. So that means that whatever the total amount is going to have to be spread across the entire city, regardless of the contribution made by from the location of the dispensary. The only restriction would be that it would have to be spent within 1.5 miles of a dispensary. So Zyda would be just as qualified to access the money as Mallow will be, and LeVar as well, being in Pine Point, regardless of how many dispensaries they have. The only caveat would be those neighborhoods that were completely excluded, like going out and toward Outer Belt Association area. I believe they do not have any streets that are listed as capable, but if they are within parts of their neighborhood, might cross over or get to that circular bar area bar. So what I would ask for the administration to do is for Phil to go back and draw the circles around all these dispensaries so we actually know the area that the money can be spent in, because just giving us a listing of the dispensaries where they are, regardless of whether they're operational or not, does not answer the question of how we can spend the money in what areas.
Yeah, so one thing that comes up for me, and I'm definitely not qualified to interpret legislation, but it says, with the purpose of improving the quality of life in disproportionately impacted neighborhoods within the city as defined by the Cannabis Control Commission and in abutting neighborhoods within 1.5 miles of a marijuana establishment.
And the but, okay.
So I don't know if that means you have the disproportionately impacted neighborhoods and the area around that you can spend in, or if the two have to overlap to spend it. I don't know the answer to that question, and I think it should be answered before Phil puts any maps together.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's just the thing is, but these are the things, this is the reason why she needed to have the meeting, because when I was approached, when Jesse's gone, Justin's gone, so Jesse, Justin, and myself, we were the architects of trying to create this with TJ. He's gone, and we didn't get to drill down on these types of issues. It was just hard enough to get the administration to agree to get it done and to put the money together. So we got that part, but we never got to how we're going to put the money out. And so that's what I'm asking now is that now that we're at that point, because I thought that we would be able to measure the contributions of each of the different dispensaries. So, and obviously we don't want an oversaturation where all the dispensaries are in one ward or one area. But when you talk about impacted communities and areas, I mean, I think that, for example, Atwater would not be one of those impacted communities, but it would be surrounded by impacted communities, because if you walk 3 blocks or 2 blocks from Atwater, you would be in an historically impacted community, but Atwater itself would not be. Island Pond Road by itself would not be an impacted community. Outer Belts Association would not historically be impacted unless you were talking about Cannon Circle, for example. So thank you.
You're welcome. So today, that was the purpose of the initiation. I did ask for the map, and I think it makes sense, to look at that mapping. But also, I think that, by starting the first meeting and in working and getting all this information, it's a good start. My concern was that this has been enacted since 2019, 2020, and we have not moved forward. And based on the needs on the community that I see, particularly in all the community, because I'm not gonna just mention only my ward, we need to define how we gonna, if those monies are there, how we gonna utilize it within the scope of the policies that we have in place by the order that was enacted. So I think the next, if the counselors, I think that the next, assignment is to look who could answer the questions, Leslie, that you cannot answer. And it's a matter of the department meeting with the other department and then establishing another meeting for those purpose. So from those, information, we could then ask more information in preparation to enact those monies so they could, the ultimate, the goal is that they come down to the community. Is any other counselors that wanna emphasize on that matter? Counselor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lindsay, just real quick, with the meeting, like my colleague Counselor, Counselor Melvin Edwards, is saying, when you're talking about the actual location and the distance, 1.5 miles. Now, is an inactive location still considered active based on the 1.5 mile?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
So say like, for instance, we have DM is inactive.
Oh,
We have Lemonade and Primus. They're not active.
Right.
Okay. But where they're located, would they now still be active as far as being able to qualify if that community is still there, even though they're inactive? Do you know what I mean?
I do, and that's exactly what I don't know the answer to. The order doesn't specify an open marijuana
Okay.
establishment. It just says a marijuana establishment. So I'm not comfortable answering that, but I think it's something that does need to be answered, yeah.
And one more thing real quick, I just, I would wanna know kind of why are these inactive ones still inactive and how can we get them active quick as possible? Because the ones that are active, 1.5 million is impressive. So, the creation of it's working, but we're still missing a lot of revenue. You know, I would love to have some of those other entities being able to put into that pot also. So I mean, I want to say, you good job to my Counselor Edwards and then putting it together. We have some kinks and things we're gonna I know we're gonna have to work out, but I would want to try to see, as far as those ones inactive, getting them active and getting more finances in this actual stabilization fund and being able to find creative ways to activate and get and tap into some of these resources. But thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I think, there's a lot of questions that have been good question asked. I think it's a matter now, having some response and look at them. And I'm pretty sure, Lindsay, that, and Kathy and Pat, per this meeting today, the city, is in the need to meet and just have another meeting. This is the beginning of it. I just wanted an update, how it works, and for the purpose of educating the community as well as ourselves, and then take it from there. I'm gonna ask if any other city council, Councilor Gavon, I recognize you.
I have a
Counselor
question also,
Whitfield had-
Counselor.
Yeah,
Councilor
Counselor
Casey.
Whitfield had her hand raised too.
Let me recognize, Councilor Westfield also is part of the
Thank you.
meeting. The floor is yours, Councilor Westfield.
Thank you. I missed the beginning of the meeting, so my question is the law, or I remember that the money couldn't be spent because it was held up by state law. Is that still the case, Lindsay?
No,
No,
it's not.
no. When did that change?
This actually wasn't one of the funds that was impacted by that.
Because I remember asking before, and I remember you and TJ saying that there was something going on the state level, why this money couldn't be spent.
Pat Burns, from my understanding, that was just the MGM revenue and the opioid funds. Did it affect this as well?
No, this money's been available. It's just that the financial order would have to be instituted by the mayor. So I think that was what was holding up the appropriation at that particular point.
So just the financial order, so there was $1.5 million in the account now?
Yes, and that's through the first 2 quarters, so we'll actually be receiving 2 more payments, one the end of this month and one the end of June. So that balance will increase before the end of the fiscal year.
So, how many payments have we gotten so far?
So the first payment was in 2021, I believe it was the 4th quarter only, but we received 4 payments in 2022 and 2023, and 2 payments so far in 2024.
Okay, so did the mayor or finance team plan on issuing a financial order anytime soon?
I'm not aware of any plans.
Me either.
So the funds are just sitting there? Do they earn interest? Do they?
Yes, they're in a separate bank account and the interest stays with the stabilization fund.
No financial order and no team put together to figure out, I'm sorry, I'm at my granddaughter's dance class, but no funds to figure out how, no team to figure out how the funds are gonna be spent in the community?
Not that I'm
So-
involved in, Counselor.
So Councilor Bushfield, if I could.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We have discussed that and I think it's a process now of having the order in place to see, I mean, this is the beginning of the process and I know there's a lot of work to be done. My major concern was that this funds has all along been allocated and it's been in an account since 2020. Like I said before you got here, I know there's impacted community that are in need of this funds. So it's a matter now, what I have done some findings. What happened was it was enacted, it was approved. I read who put the orders together. And once it was approved, there was never any movement in terms of what we were gonna do next. So I think this is the first one.
Counselor, excuse me, Madam Chair, are there allowable expenses, that the funds could be used for? I know, I remember the ordinance and the 1.5 mile ratio and all that, but are there specific areas that the funds need to be used for?
Oh, so that we have to be pending. Leslie, what is the next step? And that's what we're looking here because we could identify what could be spent on, but we have to wait for the, what is it called? The financial assessment of the matter by the mayor? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
there should be like guidelines on what these funds can be spent on, right?
Correct.
Madam
That's
Chair
what-
said, you said educational, recreational, and business incentive. That's what you listed.
Mhm,
In the order,
that's correct.
Oh, in the order.
yeah.
And I came in when Counselor Edwards was talking. Counselor Edwards said that, why is his name? The one who's drawn the circle around the map.
Phil Jomi.
Yeah, he sent something to us already, Counselor?
He sent out a list of the dispensaries, but the list includes dispensaries that are not operational. And the intent was just to kind of, I think, drill down. I can tell you that the intent was for the city council to be able to do outreach to the mayor and ask for the money to be spent in the community. But just like any financial order, he would have to be the one who files the order and we would be the ones who approve the order. But the request to Phil was for each dispensary, because I thought the question was, we have 1.5 million, which is the accumulated amount over these last few years, but each dispensary that Phil lists, some of them aren't operational. So none of them have contributed to this 1.5. And the 1.5 is supposed to be spent within 1.5 of each of the dispensaries. But according to Lindsay, we can't break down how much money came from INSA, from Six Bricks, from Primus, from Lemonade, DM, or Air Liberty. It's all one pot of money. So that's the structure for how to get the money out there isn't in place. But the intent was for us as councilors to be able to advocate from the mayor and make a request of how we want the money to be spent. He would create an order, and then it would come back and we would debate the value of the order and then have to approve its expenditure. That was the original intent.
Yeah, and I think it's fair that the funds be spent in the areas where the money is being accumulated from, because of the fact that there were some areas that were really
You can't put a
um,
dispensary in.
yeah, that didn't want it. And so I think, and then they were saying like crime will increase in these areas and things like that. And so if that's the case, then those are the areas that should benefit from the funds and the revenue, or is this revenue? Yeah, the tax revenue that we get from each area. But I'm gonna call the Cannabis Commission and see why we can't get a breakdown of the revenue that comes in from each of the dispensaries, because we should have access to that information, because they're the ones that originally created, well, the state created this tax, and then it's up to the municipalities to adopt it. Is that correct,
Yeah.
Lindsay?
That's correct. And it's the same with the hotel, motel, and the meals tax. They will not tell us specific entities that the funding came in from. We've tried.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically on the cannabis, I have tried,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't give it to us. I think.
And the
months
hotel,
ago.
but the hotel and motel tax is different. It just goes to general fund, right?
Correct.
But we have a specific local ordinance, but it's kind of the same if they think about it, right? They're just sending us our tax revenue.
Right.
So from their perspective is like the same, but from our perspective, since we have this option, it's a
Yeah,
little
you have a
different.
reason for wanting to know where
Right.
it came from, but I don't know that that would change their mind, because
Right.
we've tried to get the information before for different reasons and we weren't able to.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilor Goodbye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think a lot of the questions that I had were answered, except, so this is all the cannabis tax money that we, talked about getting when we first started talking about bringing cannabis into the city. What about the MGM money and the other, because I know MGM, we had a whole community host agreement with them. Is that money sitting somewhere? Are we able to spend that money?
So Councilor Goodbye, sorry to interrupt you. I think that's the other committee that has been formed that needs to be addressed, and I don't have the list here. But I know there's a committee formed.
Mhm. The
when-
casino committee, right?
Correct. Yes. And
Which
I will recommend to get a hold of the council president.
Mhm.
And I think that committee should be having a meeting and answering those questions, and that's a good
Mhm.
idea. Because then it gives us the overall picture. But I
Mhm.
think that's the casino committee should be the one directed to answer all those other questions.
Yeah,
And-
I just wanted to know because, a lot of these neighborhoods have been impacted, and I know, casino coming into town impacted a lot of our other neighborhoods. Downtown looks wonderful, but out here in Indian Orchard and in, Mason Square, a lot of the work hasn't been done. That's been done downtown. So that's the only reason I was bringing it up. So regarding the cannabis money, I know that, in Indian Orchard, we only have one and they haven't opened yet, and Light, and I didn't see it on the list. They should be opening soon. But Liberty, which is I think it used to be Holistic Industries, Liberty out on Boston Road is, in our neighborhood. It's about a mile away from Indian Orchard, Berkshire Avenue, Main Street. So I'd like to see if we could find a process to find out what we want to do, right? And I think not what we want to do, but what the community wants to do. So I don't know if there's a way that we might have some community meetings around this, talking to the residents, maybe going to neighborhood councils and just maybe listening from them what they think, would be a good use of this money. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I think it's a good idea. What I entertaining as the chair to see what the questions that was asked here today, if we could get some answers. And then from that process of getting the answers of the mapping, like the Councilor Edwards has requested in the surrounding area and the financial order, then probably that will be a phase. We are phase one. I always put names to it, phase one. Then from there, look at what we have at the next meeting, and then go to phase, that will be like phase two, if not. So, in the matter, there's a lot of, this is good because it's questions that have been asked. We are looking for answers as an assignment. And then, I think I will have all the city councilors, not only my committee, informed of the matter. And Lindsay, I'm not gonna put you on the front line, but so I could have more of the list for the next meeting of the Neighborhood Stabilization Committee. I'm just gonna give it a frame time at the end of April, if that, so we could have another meeting for update, if that sounds reasonable,
Definitely, yep.
okay? There's any other counselors that wanna ask, any other questions? I think this was a very effective meeting. I think that we have a lot of work to do in keeping in mind always working in collaboration. Thank you to everyone for attending. And then I will keep our other counselors informed as well. Thank you so much.